Welcome to Ted.Thomas's Handholding and Deal-Making Video Coach Lesson 5. In this lesson, you'll learn from Coach Crystal. She will share with you what you need to do next after getting a tax-defaulted property at auction and the benefits of working with a real estate agent. You'll also hear from two special guests who took Ted.Thomas's course and, most importantly, they took action and earned big profits. They will share with you their auction experiences in two different counties, and they will share with you how they purchased from outside the United States. During this lesson, you'll hear from successful students who started out just like you. They are Ted.Thomas students who studied the program, attended the Ted.Thomas Auction Preparation Workshop, participated in the weekly question and answers webinars with a Ted.Thomas coach, and ultimately purchased tax lien certificates and tax defaulted properties. They are here to share their success secrets and strategies with you. Let's get started.
Hi, this is Crystal Migliori, aka Coach Crystal, and I'm back because I want to talk about yikes, what's next? Well, no worries, I can assure you there's no worries here. You're just going to keep following the Ted.Thomas process. We're going to talk about selling and closing at a distance. Congratulations, you were successful at the auction. I always get so excited when I hear that. So I want to tell you though, don't slow down now, keep moving forward. It's so important to move on to the sales process now that you've acquired the property. So we're going to do an overview of what that sales process includes. This lesson provides the overview of the next steps in the tax deed sales process. Now remember, the conclusion of it is when you get your check. So you're just going to follow the process along, just kind of like the little guy in the picture here. And no worries, just go through all the steps, get to the end, and collect your check. One thing that you need to know is, when will the deed be issued? Well, it's important because that's when you get right of ownership and access to the property. Access is so important. But do you have access to the property before you own it? In most cases, before that deed is recorded and you're the owner of record, no access, you don't have that access because you're probably legally trespassing. Now, there's a few cases where there's differences in that. Exceptions, well, there's a few sales, as you can see here. Some sales specifically state a right to access a property for purposes of securing a vacant property. Now, I've seen this primarily in Michigan. So you want to look for any information like that because it's important. If for some reason the property's not secured, you would have the right to access the property, but you don't have the right to do anything else until you're the legal owner of the property. Ownership. Well, one of the questions I hear quite often is it okay to market the property before the deed's recorded? Well, I know Ted says go ahead and get started. I tend to be a little more conservative. You can choose to do what you want to do. But in some cases, you do have the legal right to list a property. But verify it when you talk to your agent. If you're listing, verify that it is okay since you have paid the final payment and you're just waiting for the deed to be recorded. Will that work? Okay, immediate needs. You've got the deed. Is there something that the property needs right now? Now remember, Ted says, don't fix them. Sell them. Buy low, sell low fast. Well, that's a good philosophy, except for sometimes there's something that it needs right now. It's urgent. Maybe code enforcement has said, hey, you cut that lawn and get those weeds trimmed down, or we're slapping a fine on the property. That would be an immediate need as far as I consider it. Okay, here's some benefits of listing with an agent. Let's look at these. Number one, an agent usually has an existing buyer's list. You want buyers? They've got an existing list. That would be a benefit to you when they're the right kind of buyers. MLS, the multiple listing service, they have access to that. And their access to that attracts other agents because other agents see the listing on the MLS and then they say, oh, I've got a client that would like to buy that. Local resources, they know people in the community. They have the relationships with people in that community that you won't be able to establish, especially if you're long distance, but you can do that with them. Relationships with a team of people. Yes, they're going to have that. If they've been in the business any amount of time at all, they're going to have those relationships with other people. Experience. You want an agent with experience. They will be able to walk you through. They'll know what's happened in other situations. And you want somebody that's going to come up with the solutions. Sometimes there's challenges when you're closing, and you want to be able to get that information. And that experience will really help you, especially if you don't have a lot of real estate experience yourself. The agent, well, guess what? They're on location. They would be your person on location that would help you with the things that need, like cash for keys, finding out who's in the property, trashing it out if it needs to, getting it listed. They would be able to assist with that. And it's not uncommon for them to do that, especially if they've worked in foreclosures, REOs, things like that. That's part of the services they provide. And helps you save time. Makes it easier when they've got things in place for you because you don't have to build your own team and to get things going. Okay, now we come to the question, should you sell a property yourself? Well, I've got to tell you, over the years since 2001, I've sold a lot of my own properties, and I've also listed them. So my decision, because I'm nearby the properties, basically is, what else do I have going on in my life? Am I going to have the time to devote to it? Is it a property that I believe will sell real quick, or I might not have a buyer's list and maybe an agent does, and I want to list it? Those are the things I think about. But let me go over the pros and cons for you. Pros, experience. Do you have experience marketing a property and selling it yourself? Are you familiar with the process? Would you know which agreement and contract you need to use? How you would communicate with them? If it's a house, it's difficult to sell a house if there's no one there to show the property. So that would be something to think about. More interest when you get paid. Hey, yes, the agent's not going to get paid until they sell a property, but you have a lot more interest as to when you're going to get paid. And you have a better understanding of how important it is to move things quickly. So it is a benefit when you do it right and you do follow through in marketing and get sold quickly. It's beneficial. You would have direct contact with any prospects. So as potential buyers come, you would be able to get feedback from them. And it's easier to adjust to the feedback that they give you when you're hearing it firsthand. Now the cons, experience. Maybe you don't have very much experience, so maybe that's something that would be detrimental. If you don't have any experience selling properties, I highly recommend that you have an agent sell at least the first one, especially if you're doing it at a distance. Need to develop your own team? Well, you won't have to. If you're working with an agent, you will if you don't have that availability of access to other people. Access, if you're not on location, here's the challenge. How do you provide access to a property when you're not there? Now, if it's a piece of land, that's a little bit different. Follow up. If you don't have time to follow up with prospects, don't sell a property yourself, because you'll be doing a lot of work, but without the follow-up and the follow-through, it's not going to be as successful. And time required. It's going to take time. You're going to have to follow up with prospects. You're going to have to do your own marketing. So it's just beneficial sometimes to list the property, let somebody else sell it for you, and you start looking at the next opportunity coming up, the next auction. Marketing. Well, marketing, the how-to stuff, that's covered in great detail in other segments. So there's a marketing plan checklist on Ted's Resource Center. There's information on selling properties quickly. There's all kinds of other resources, video or handouts for you. So look for those. Communication. Communication is essential. Without communication, I think it's probably virtually impossible to sell properties. You need to be able to communicate with the agent. Do you remember a game when you were in elementary school where you'd sit in a circle and someone would start with a sentence and they would whisper it in the ear of the person next to them? And then they would keep doing that all the way around. Well, by the time it got to the person that started it, what was started and what ended up at the end, when it went through a number of different people, were two totally different things. Communication, you need to stay on top of things. So you're going to have communication and follow-up even when you list, because you want to follow up with the agent and you want to make sure you're communicating and being aware of this status. And Remember those communication skill grades you gave to agents when you were talking to them before? Now is when it comes in handy. And it's not just them. You have to be able to communicate with them just like they have to be able to communicate with you. So communication is essential. Now, this is a world of texting and email. Well, sometimes a good old-fashioned phone call will get you what you need. Texting and email, I think there's a place for them, but they shouldn't be the only option. So one thing to consider would be the reason. What is the purpose? What do you need to find out? If it's something that's in great detail and you're trying to determine what the issues are or the important parts, it's difficult to go back and forth with email and keep it straight. So asking questions by email sometimes is a challenge. If it's a quick question, yeah, but if it's going back and, explain to me how to do this. Oh, but what about this? And pretty soon you're going back and forth and you can't remember what the topic was. Speed. If it's something that requires a speedy answer, text or email. Hey, that's probably great. If it's clear what you need, you just need an answer. Decisions, if it needs a quick decision, yes. Sometimes just text or email if you have a clear idea. Oh, I need to know what you decided. I need to know by noon. Just send me an email or send me a text and we're good. You could have that conversation with an agent. But other things more detailed, if it's something you don't understand, then talking really is a good idea. Okay, here's a series of conversations to have with an agent before listing. Now, you're going to want to write these down. And you're going to probably want to come back and review this video more than once. So, before you list, these are important. Request a marketing plan. On Ted's Resource Center, there's a marketing plan checklist. Selling properties is about marketing. If you don't market properties or an agent doesn't market them, how do they know? How does anyone know that that property is for sale? So it's difficult to sell properties without marketing. Now, I've got to tell you, there was a conversation I had with one of my friends who's a real estate agent, and we were sitting kind of in a cafe. It was kind of quiet, and we were talking. And he said, Crystal, we were talking about marketing. He said, Crystal, do you realize that when the agents in California are studying to pass the real estate license test so they can get licensed, that there are absolutely zero questions on marketing? They receive no training on marketing. There are no questions on the test about marketing. And now remember, this is a quiet place. And I went, what? You've got to be kidding. How is that possible? And a few heads kind of turned and I was very shocked. But I was really shocked that there was no training for marketing because to me, it's one of the most essential things. So if your agent that you're talking to thinks that putting it on the MLS and putting a sign in the yard is sufficient, no, it's not, unless they're the only agent around. They should give you a marketing plan checklist. Then go through and communicate with them how long it's going to take to implement those different components. You know, how long is it going to take to get the listing on the MLS, the multiple listing service? How long will it take to get the sign in the yard? What type of online advertising are they doing? Are they using Craigslist, Postlets, a number of other things that are mentioned on the marketing plan checklist? Oh, how often will those be updated? Then, when you've gone through that and you have all that information, what I recommend you do, and this is what I like to do, is request that they incorporate that marketing plan checklist into the listing agreement. Why? You never want, or I don't know about you, but I never want to have a property that's listed that's sitting there because they're not marketing it. And I don't have control over that because the listing, you have listing, it won't expire for several months, but you're kind of locked into the marketing. So you need to make sure that the properties can be marketed correctly and frequently and things are done on time. I'd say I'd want it incorporated in the listing agreement, and then should they not follow the timeline that we discussed, then I reserve the right to cancel a listing agreement with no penalty. Now I would tell them, hey, it's not trying to avoid paying you a commission. I want to pay you a commission. As a matter of fact, I want to pay you a commission sooner rather than later. That's why I'm insisting on marketing being done. So make sure you're in agreement there. If you're not, it makes the process very painful later on. Okay, You also want to request a CMA. Now, a CMA is a comparative market analysis. What they're doing is they're getting sold comps from the area and telling you what they believe based on those comps your property would sell for. You also want to make it clear that you want to price the property to sell quickly because you want to sell bargains to bargain hunters. Just use those terms. I would love selling bargains to bargain hunters, and I want this property to sell quickly. What should I price it at for it to sell quickly for all cash? Make sure that's clear. Don't let them talk you into, oh, well, the retail sale would get you a lot more money. Don't fall for it. It'll take longer. Other topics before listing. Disclose to the agent that you purchased the property at a tax sale. Now's the right time to talk about this, and maybe when they drove by and looked at the properties for you and took pictures, it would be a good idea for them to have know about that then. But here is essential, because if for some reason they have any sort of bias against a tax sale property, you want to know now before it's listed. You don't want to waste any time having to go back and have it be a challenge. It won't be good for you, and it's not going to be good for them either. You also want to let them know that you're conveying title to the property via a quit-claim deed. Not a grant deed, not a warranty deed, not any of the other deeds where they're guaranteeing the title. Unless you choose to do this, you want to do a conveying title via a quit-claim deed. And I'll talk a little bit more some of the other choices. Okay, terms of the sale. Talk about them before this. If it's cash only, let them know that. If it's cash and you'll do seller financing, maybe a land contract or a contract for deed, ask them how that'll help. Will that be good? Make it very clear. You're not wanting your buyers to go out and get a new traditional loan for the property. That's not a good fit. That's what a retail buyer would do. That's not the type of buyer you want in most cases. For me, it's all cases. Before the listing, terms of the sale. Reiterate, quick closing. That means I don't want to sit there for 60 days for the period of closing. How quick can you close? It depends on different parts of the country, but I've closed properties in just a couple days, so it's possible. Make it clear that you want to accept backup offers. Now, let me tell you what a backup offer is. A backup offer is where you've got an offer from a buyer. It's under contract. It's in escrow. The intention is in no way to find an offer better than that one and then cancel that one. That is not the plan. The plan is, it's kind of like a safety net. If you're on a trapeze and that didn't work out, you would want something to fall back on, right? A backup offer is where you've got an accepted contract. It's in escrow. Should that buyer not fulfill the contract terms as specified in your contract, so should they not follow through, you have somebody waiting that has already made an offer on the property. The property does not have to go back on the market because you've already got a contract. It's a contract contingent upon the other contract not closing. So the only way the buyer's going to get bumped out is if they don't perform. You're not going to cancel on them. If they don't perform, then you've got the backup offer to fall back on. That's your safety net. You don't have to go through the whole process of marketing the property again and getting a backup offer or getting an offer on the property. Also make it very clear to the agent, and this should be very clear in the listings, if this is your intention, and I think it is because you're going to follow Ted's philosophy, the property is sold in as-is condition. As it is. As a matter of fact, in most cases, the title's as-is condition as well, if that's what you choose. Okay, more. Property sold as is. That means if there's things that need to be done to the property, the buyer is going to do them. Make sure that the agent knows that the expectation is you're going to check up with them. I'd say weekly updates from an agent is good. Getting feedback from them. What are prospects saying about the property? That's really important. As a matter of fact, I tell them, hey, I want to know what people are saying about the property. Because when you know what they're saying, then the marketing can reflect that. I've got to tell you, I had a property, and it's an area where I live on the valley floor, very flat area of the Sacramento Valley. And about 20 miles away, there's the beginning, the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. And there was a property that we had that was kind of on the top of a little hill. And I thought the view was okay. You know, it wasn't a bad view. It wasn't like it looked down into the valley. It just looked at other hilltops. But when I had open houses and I had people come look at that property, almost every person though would get up there and say, hey, this has got a great view up here. Now, what did the market just tell me about that property? It had a view. So what did I do? I incorporated that into all of my marketing, a little hilltop view. And which is exactly what it was. They could see the tops of other hills in the area. They didn't have a fantastic valley view, but it had a view. So that was something that would appear in the ad because the market told me that's what it had. So the weekly updates are important, and getting feedback is too. Okay, more on this listing stuff, but this is so important. This is one time, please, please, please do not cut yourself short here thinking that you can list with the first agent that you find that says they'll accept the listing. They're not doing you a favor. You're providing business for them. You need to get someone you can communicate and that understands this. Because if not, if you skip time here, I guarantee you, you're going to pay on the back end. Maybe not in money, but maybe not, but in time and frustration. So spend your time on the front end here. As is. Title. Is it as is? And title insurance is not an option. Now, I'm not going to go into title insurance. I'm not going to go into the certification process by Tax Title Services. I'm not going to talk about quiet title actions. Why not? Ted has so many resources available for you, and they've already done a fantastic job. So I'm just going to do the overview here with you. So the choices are as is with the title in its current condition. No title insurance is probably going to be available. Is it possible to sell properties like that? Absolutely. I have people selling across the country with no title insurance, not doing anything to the title, fully disclosed. It's no secret. There's no secrets here. Disclosures are required that it was purchased at a tax sale. Okay, another option would be to do the certification process that's offered by Tax Title Services at www.taxtitleservices.com, and then that would provide access to title insurance for the buyer. The third option is to do a quiet title action with access to title insurance after it's completed. And again, on Ted's Resource Center, the Ted.Thomas Resource Center and membership site, there is all kinds of information available. So you can look up that and look for those certain words.
Coach Crystal just shared with you some of her tips and tricks when it comes time to sell your property. First, you need to know when you will have access to the property you want at the auction. Once you have success, you can go inside, take pictures, and assess the property's condition. Coach Crystal also talked about the benefits of using a local real estate agent to help sell your property and the key things you need to ask them before deciding to list it with an agent. Now you're going to hear from Kelly Osmak. Kelly's a successful Ted.Thomas student who lives in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Kelly did all of his tax-defaulted property deals right from his basement office computer. He never left his home. Kelly will share his experience attending the Riverside County auction in California and how he was able to bid online, purchase a property, and never have to leave the comfort of his home.
My third deal was I went back to Riverside County. They had an auction online, of course. Never left my chair. You know, don't want to leave my chair. I believe there was about 460 properties listed in this sale, and there was a wide range. There was one house that was listed for $1.4 million in the sale, right down to your empty vacant lots, right? So there was quite a variety of decent houses, lots, high-end houses, you name it. Everything was in this sale. So again, I narrowed down my list. You know, I wanted that $1.4 million house, but it was a little bit out of my budget. So I made my list of my top 15, 20 properties. And then the ones not so great, and I started bidding. I bid probably on the top 10. I started bidding on, you know, and watched the auction go through. The one that I ended up purchasing was later in the sale, so I think, you know, like me, just, you know, with limited funds, like most of the people are at these auctions, you know, you find the one in the beginning of the sale, they buy it, and then they're done, right? So I was patiently waiting, going through the sale, waiting for these other ones, bidding on these other ones, you know. It seems like the bidding starts to slow down a little bit. And then this property was, well, not, well, about on, there was like 15, 20 pages of properties. This was on the last third last page in the list. So it was around 140, and like I said, you know, with bid for assets, they had 5 more minutes every time someone bid. So I bid 140, and then I was getting down to the last minute, and somebody bids like 140, 100, right? So it adds 5 more minutes. So we back and forth this 140, 141, 142, 143, all the way up to 177, and it added at least probably an hour, oh, maybe an hour and a half onto the auction, because for every time somebody bids, it adds that extra 5 minutes. And so I was topped out. My top bid was 177,777 and 77 cents. That's as high as I was going. That was the cap I put on myself for that property. So I ended up getting it for $177,200. So it was $577.77 for my max. Yeah, so that's yeah, and it was like I was getting like frustrated already, because it was getting to be like somebody would add you know, an extra $100, and they would add this extra time, and it'd be ticking down to 5, 4, 3 seconds, and then somebody would add another $100. I have not seen inside. My realtor had snapped some pictures from the outside. So it says solid cedar logs, large kitchen with Japanese porcelain countertops, custom cabinets, 900 square foot master suite with huge walk-in closet, grand bathroom on a floor of its own. Great 30-foot ceiling in the great room. Laundry room, extra room attached for maid, mother-in-law office, 900 square feet. All U.S. steel building on the lower of the property, cement slag, office, storage, horses, 3-car attached garage plus a 4-car carport. Great surrounding deck with unbelievable views. This property is completely fenced with a private gate entrance plus an additional gate on the lower part of the property for workers. 5 acres, built in 1996. It's a 5-acre parcel showing the house and the garage and the steel work shed out in the back. Fully intend to use a realtor on this one again, just because I'm not there. There's no way I could show the property. Yeah. And we've got to make them work a little bit for their money. You know, he'll go in, we'll do an assessment of the inside, you know, arrange maybe for some cleaners or whatever is required. Get it listed and let him do their magic. It's for me, being here, there's no way I could show it myself. There's no way, you know, I could feel calls about it, but it's like if I've never even seen the property, you know, say, what about this? What about that? Well, I have no idea. Yeah. Well, I hate to discourage anybody doing anything that they love. If you love your job, that's great. You know, this is something you could do part-time. It never hurts to have multiple streams of income, especially in the economy that we have right now. You hear of CEOs that are getting fired and companies that are closing for no apparent reason. If you're working for another company, you never know day to day if they're doing okay, if you're going to be employed. They may run into trouble. You never know. This is something that you can be independent. You don't need anyone else's assistance. You do it on your own. You do your research. If you have the opportunity to go the in-person training on a live event that Ted hosts, take that opportunity and look at your future in a different light. You know, like you may have thought you were, you know, just going to retire on a pension or a salary or the government pension, which is basically nothing these days. Have another look at this. You know, use some of your savings, your line of credit. You got lots of money in your house. You know, find a way to make this happen. You know, you will be so much more richly rewarded from and it's not a lot of work, and anybody can do this. You don't need any special skills. You just need to, do your due diligence, do your research, and be prepared.
Anyone can do this. Kelly lives in Canada and invests in the United States online. Ted.Thomas has taught people all over the world how to invest in tax lien certificates and tax defaulted property. Kelly was able to do this deal with the help of his Ted.Thomas coach after attending the 3-day auction preparation workshop and the Ted.Thomas learning materials. There is no other training in the world like the one you're watching right now. Now we'll go back to Coach Crystal, where she'll teach you exactly what needs to be done once you gain ownership of the property, how to choose an agent that is right for your property, and what you need to do in order to get the property sold.
Before listing, again, you want to talk to the agent about closing costs so you're aware of what happens. The status, the updates expected from the agent. Remember we said we're going to do status updates. Length of the listing agreement. This is really important too. The longest that I would probably ever do a listing agreement is 3 months. Why? Because if they haven't sold it in 3 months, I might not want them to continue to try to sell the property. I want somebody to get it sold. If they haven't sold in 3 months, either the price is wrong, but maybe not. Maybe just no one knows about the property because it's not being marketed properly. Agents usually want you to have 6 months, 9 months. Some cases, some areas, they might say a year. If somebody takes a year to sell a property, you don't want to do it. So the length of the listing agreement, this is locking you into a legally binding agreement where you said you're paying them commission. They have the right to sell the property. Sometimes you don't even have the right to market the property. Now, if you want to do that, it's important that you tell the agent that. Hey, I want to do some marketing. Is it okay with you if I market it in different areas? I will market it and send the calls to you. Would that be okay? You need to make sure your agreement allows you to do that if that's what you choose to do. Okay, commission rate. Notice I put the commission rate last. Now, because it's not all that important. If 1 or 2 percentage points makes a difference, whether you've got a good deal or a bad deal, you've got a bad deal to start with. If you've never worked with an agent, please don't ask them to take a cut in their commission rate. That is that is a kiss of death for a relationship with an agent. Just don't do that. Now, if you've done multiple deals with them and you've proven that you're realistic, you're easy to work with, you make quick decisions, you stick to what you decide, then when there's volume and they know that you're easy to work with, then they might want to negotiate and be agreeable with that. But until then, if it's 6%, then it's 6%. If it's a lower priced property and they charge $1,500 to list it and to sell it, then that's what it is. Okay, yay, the tax deed is recorded. You have ownership, you have access. Now you own it. Now remember, you don't have to wait for it in the mail. You just have to see that it's recorded. It's on public record. Now the question is, at this time, is the property vacant or is it occupied? Depending on the answer to that will kind of depend on what the next steps are. What's next? Well, if it's vacant, request the agent access the property and view the property, taking lots of pictures, tons of pictures, detailed, with a real camera, very detailed pictures, zoom up so you know exactly what you're talking about or what they're talking about when they're talking to you. You want to know what the issues might be. Condition. You want them to report on the condition. As you see here, report on the condition. Anything that they might see. It doesn't mean that you've got to fix it. It just means that someone probably is going to have to fix it. So you need to count that and take that into account. Ask them to make recommendations. What would they recommend? Sometimes if you simply clean things out a little better, it makes it more appealing. But there's kind of a tipping point I found with guys that reno or rehab properties. If you clean it out too much, even though there's still work to be done, they don't get as excited about it. I don't know, it makes no sense. But some people I've worked with, the stinkier, the dirtier the property, the happier they are. Ask them to take and send you lots of pictures, anything and everything, because you want to see the true condition of the property right now. Occupied. Okay, so it's occupied. Is it a tenant or is it the prior owner? Are they staying or are they moving? And a little bit earlier, I talked about cash for keys or the eviction process. Cash for keys is always a good bet to start there because then you usually don't even have to get to the next step. So occupied, not occupied. And again, agents, this is something that some agents are very used to doing. Okay, when it's listed, ask for them to send you a link to the MLS listing. Why do you want this? You want to see what they're saying. Make sure it's accurate. And is it targeted to the most likely buyer? If the most likely buyer is a builder or investor, it's totally a different conversation, different terminology than they would use with a retail buyer. You don't want to talk about, beautiful this and great that and family home and all of this. That's really not the right terminology for a builder, developer, and investor. And expect feedback. Tell me you want the feedback. Okay, here's important. Let's look at this. When a written offer has been submitted, write this down. Price is not the only consideration. Remember all of those conversations to have with the agent before? Well, if you just say, oh, price, I got my price, great, let's sign it. What about if the contract came in with all of these terms that you said you weren't going to do? So are the terms and conditions, are they as stipulated prior to the listing? And are they acceptable with you? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. So you need to read everything. If you don't understand what the contract says, because legal mumbo jumbo, then you need to tell the agent you need them to explain so you understand it. Okay, and here, when a written offer has been submitted, do not sign an offer without reading it. Ask the agent to explain if it is necessary. Condition of title and title insurance. There's a whole clause in a standard listing agreement, a standard purchase and sales agreement that talks about marketable title and what you're going to do and how you're going to provide it. Most cases, that should not be, I would cross that out or counter that, strike that clause and then handwrite what I would be willing to do. Inspections. If it's a house, the buyer's going to want to do some inspections, possibly. Investors, maybe not. I bought properties without doing inspections, but you need to know. And the closing date. If you want to close quickly and they want to take 60 days, that's not very quick. That might mean it's no. Here we go. The choice is yours. You're the owner. You're the owner of this property. You get to decide. So here's your choices. You can accept the offer as it's written. You can negotiate by making a counteroffer, meaning I agree to all of this except here I don't agree to this. This is what I would like to agree to instead. You can negotiate, make that counteroffer. You can just outright reject the offer, say no, or don't accept or don't counter, and you just move on so they don't hear back from you at all. So when there's an offer received, there's usually a date. This offer is good for 3 days from the time of signing. Well, you need to know that. Make sure your agent knows you want to see offers in writing. What happens is if they make verbal offers, you might say, yeah, I'm agreeable, put it in writing, but if they don't, they might think, their client might think that you said okay. And then you might feel obligated even though you don't have it in writing. So make it easy. Put it in writing. And it's my understanding that if an offer is in writing, the agent cannot refuse to show it to you. They're legally bound to show you that offer. International investors. Okay. International investors, if you bought the property in your own name, and you do not have an individual tax identification number, as soon as you get it under, or before you get it under contract, actually, before you get it under contract, I want you to discuss this with the escrow and title company or the closing attorneys before agreeing to use a specific company in the contract. Why is sometimes they have different rules. Now, the IRS has very clear rules about obtaining a tax identification number and filling out the 8288 form and all of that, but the title company or the closing attorney doesn't want to get caught in the middle. So they might have a company policy that's different. So this is really important if you're an international investor. Why? Well, the title and escrow company or the closing attorney, they may require that you have the ITIN number before closing. Matter of fact, if you don't, it might slow down closing. Or they may let you apply for the ITIN number when closing. It might be a company policy issue. And if it's a company policy, sometimes it's tough to get around. Matter of fact, I have clients the other day, I talked to the title company and I said, hey, I've got people that have closed before, and when you fill out the 8288 form, you simply include the W-7 and you send them off together. I looked up in the IRS regulations, and it says that the seller can fill out the 8288A form, send in their W-7 under different, in a different package or envelope, send it in, and it's good. But here's the thing, the chicken and the egg. If the title company will not allow you to close before you have the tax ID number, and the IRS doesn't want to give you the tax ID number until you have a taxable event, it goes back and forth. So to avoid this, before you get in escrow, if they've specified a title company, contact that title company, explain the situation, and make sure that it's a good fit for you. If it's not, maybe call some other title companies in the area to see if their rules are different. This will save a lot of frustration. Also, international investors. Talk to the title and escrow company or the closing attorney about the requirement when signing papers outside the U.S. Papers, officially recorded documents, require a notary. And the notary is different in different states, and it would be different internationally also. So they may require that you sign in the U.S., which you really don't want to do because you're doing this all from a distance, right? May require that you sign at a U.S. consulate. That would be a little easier to work with. They may have other solutions and choices for you. So they may be flexible, or they may have a strict requirement. Talk to them before it becomes an issue. Then that way you're set up as this goes through to go nice and smoothly, because timing is everything, because every day you're delaying is costing you money. So you're under contract now. Now, let me tell you, I've been married to a man that for 35 years who is a baseball coach. And baseball coaches can be a little superstitious. So maybe some of that rubbed off on me. But anytime I've ever had a property under contract or in escrow, and I've started thinking about it as sold, it's like the universe says, okay, it's sold. I don't need to worry about sending any other prospects. I don't need any other marketing to reach anybody that potentially would be interested. And start thinking about sold in my mind. And you know what happens? Those are the times when there's been challenges of getting something closed. I haven't had very many things fall out of escrow, but the ones when I ever started thinking about it being sold before it actually was, that's when I had problems. So it's a mindset. If it's under contract or in escrow, that's exactly what it is. Sold, it's only sold when the deed is recorded and the check is in your hand, or that wire transfer is in your bank account. Then you can say it's sold. Then you're moving on to the next property. Okay, escrow company versus closing attorney. In the United States, in the eastern part of the country, which was settled first, and then the progress was west, in the eastern part of the country, it's very common for those areas to use closing attorneys. In the west, escrow companies are very common. Now, an escrow company is an independent third-party company that acts on behalf of both parties. So the buyer and the seller, they represent both. They draw up the documents. They have a legal department that they run everything through, but you're not using a closing attorney. So the agent would be able to tell you more about this and what's common in the area. What I think is that the escrow companies usually are less cost and usually faster, because not waiting for a closing attorney to draw it up, they're drawing up the paperwork and such for you. Okay, the closing process. Well, once there's a contract or an agreement, escrow's open, copy of the agreements provided, escrow money, or a good faith deposit from the buyer is deposited into an escrow account made payable to the escrow company. Not payable to you, not payable to the agent, not payable to anybody else but the escrow company. They're watching over the money for you. Closing process. Well, the buyer performs the due diligence by their deadline. Maybe they're verifying easements. Maybe they're checking something with the planning and development department. Whatever their due diligence is, they're doing it by the deadline. You perform as specified in the agreement. You do what you're supposed to do. Then, the closing process. The buyer performs the due diligence by the deadline. You perform as specified. Preliminary closing statement called a HUD-1 will be issued by the title and escrow company or the closing attorney. Then the buyer pays the escrow balance. They paid a deposit, and then they're paying whatever else is required to close as instructed by the title and escrow company or the closing attorney. And we'll just say the closing agent. So they put the money in. Then, international sellers, I want to remind you, do you need a tax ID number? Form 8288 is completed at closing. W-7 would request that for you. They may submit it with it, or you may be required to do it yourself before closing. So you want to make sure this is clear. You don't want to wait till you get ready to close and find out, oh, this is going to delay things. Closing documents. Well, the escrow company or the closing attorney prepares the closing documents, and then the documents are sent to you. Now, earlier we talked about the requirements for signing, the notary requirements. Again, you want to verify those ahead of time, and you want to verify the return instructions. What do you do to get the documents back to them? Now, a notary, let me back up a little bit. A notary basically isn't telling you the documents are legal or anything like that. They are simply verifying that they've proved to their satisfaction, as they're required to do, that you are who you say you are. So they know that they verified that if your name is John Smith and John Smith is selling the property, they've checked your ID, you're signing as John Smith, then they're notarizing that they've verified that. Verify the return instructions, and then the buyer would sign any required documents. Usually they don't have to sign very much. Okay, this is starting to get excited. I hope you know where we're going with this. The deed is recorded. Well, when they have all the paperwork ready, all the money is in, everything's signed, they send someone down to the county offices to record the documents. They'll do what they call a date down search. So they're searching for any liens that have been recorded against the property since the last time they checked. So from that date down to the current date. When there are none, they will record the deed. If there is something that's popped up, they won't record the deed. They'll have to do more research. Then, once the deed's recorded, the sale is closed and funds are released from escrow. Now, your agent, if you've got an agent, you've listed with an agent, the agents will get paid commission, the buying and selling side, and any other maybe prorated taxes or any other fees that need to be paid, and the net proceeds come to you. Now, you might specify you want a wire transfer, or they may send a check. But whatever you do, make a copy of your check or your wire transfer. Make a copy. This is something that's really, really important, because you never know when you might be doing something like this. And now it's sold and you get it paid. But there's a couple more steps. Tell us your success story. Contact Ted's office at 321-449-9940. Let them know that you've bought a property, you've sold it, you just got your check. It's really important. Let them know. And I host the Wednesday night Ted.Thomas Q&A Success Club call, and most nights, and I sure would like to be able to hear it. So speak up on the Wednesday night webinar. Whoever's hosting it will be happy to hear what's happened. Okay, afterwards, we got a couple more steps. You got the money, but there's a few things we want you to do. Always calculate your net profit. Make sure that the profit is what you think it was. Now, you know you got the check, but remember, you've already paid out money. So you would take your sales price, you would subtract your closing and sales costs, which will be set up on the HUD-1 statement, and any other costs you might be having, a holding cost, acquisition cost, what did it cost to acquire it, and any other costs. Also, don't forget, if you're paying to use some money, you've got a private investor or you're paying interest to someone, make sure you include the cost of that money as one of your expenses. Once you subtract those, then you have your net profit. Now, look at the amount that you initially invested, the return on your investment that you required. Did you get the return that you thought? Did you make more money than you thought you were going to? Did you make less money than you thought you were going to? What made the difference? Was there something that you did not include that should be included? Because you need to know that for future deals. Okay, one of the last steps, write a review of your experience. What went as you expected? Write it out. What will you do differently next time? You know, I've gone through life learning the things I don't want to do that way again because I know there's a better way. So did anything like that happen to you? Will you do something differently next time? Because these are going to be your instructions for the next sale, and especially the next time you do a transaction in this county. Also, write down, what did you learn from the process? Because if something doesn't go quite as you expect, if you turn it into a learning lesson, then it's positive. So what did you learn? And then you want to remember that for the future.
Coach Crystal discussed several important topics that you'll want to write down. Coach Crystal talked about what steps need to be taken when you first gain ownership of the property. You need to have pictures of everything inside and outside of the house to help you sell the property. She also explained that you should have an agent view the property to review its condition and consider who your potential buyer could be. Coach Crystal also talked